in a good position to innovate deliberative democracy because we have the privilege of doing it on stolen land.
And this is how institutions like citizens' assemblies or deliberative polls that bring together randomly selected citizens to collectively develop responses to pressing issues have become the most popular participatory process to be exported from the global north.
So it's really important to somehow break this idea of collective governance as artificial and often fictional public spheres in which gender, class and racial inequalities can be addressed temporarily just with one or two design tweaks.
I want to work with racially minoritized communities, so I'm going to invest my time, resources to build relationships with these communities. It's not about extracting knowledge from these communities and going away, but it's actually what am I also doing with those communities to further their own agenda.
I've been suppressing subjugated knowledge from my own biographical context.
We lack this expansive and decentered understanding of deliberative participatory democracy.
My biographical context, the examples I know from my home country do not count. They're not valid forms of knowledge because they do not fit the canons of deliberative democracy.
Conflict zones, areas controlled by gangs, by organized crime. Also, maybe democracies that are actually functional but co-opted by elitists.
Maybe there is something wrong with the canon.
How do we restructure that world order and the hierarchies of knowledge?
How can we really shift the narrative in Europe on Europe's role in the world?
The question is not whether there are parallelisms between indigenous democracy and deliberative democracy. The question is, why is indigenous democracy still in the margins of our conversation? And why do we think that deliberative democracy should be the reference point for democratic innovation?
In theory, mini-publics are an instrument to prevent elite capture, to reference the book by Olufemi Taiwo. In theory, they're supposed to prevent elite capture. I would say in practice, they are very much an example of elite capture.
Because what I found in deliberation and participation is when you're not connected to understanding how to know particular experiences, you don't get it. You don't, people won't necessarily always share that with you straight away.
So thinking about participation and deliberation in terms of self-governance and collective care also implies understanding the political character of deliberation, its transnational and local dependencies, and how processes are really inseparable from the communities and the context where they take place.
When people from the Global South use deliberative forums to confront the state to give better resources, to utilize that space for patronage, for example, there's always an impression that, we need to build the capacity of people in the third world so they can deliberate.
So to truly understand deliberation beyond the West, we first need to understand the thousands of deliberative institutions that precede design deliberation and that have historically operated in those territories anyway, with or without institutional support.
Can mini-publics be a source for good or force for good?
Relationships, connections, reciprocity, accountability, how can we use that as a tool for liberation?
Have you seen the film with...
But yes.
I know her on a one-to-one.
Part of the protest.
Okay.